think we should cover all the things that we've done about the block and the router and so on, the main concepts, and we should talk about those. I will not ask you to code, but I may ask you to put like graphs of like the widgets, how you would structure them and like draw them as nested graphs, outside scaffold, just like how I've been showing in class, with the nesting, just to show that structure. So just go over these things and, are we ready to go? Yes. For the homework?
The Go router.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, you're not seeing it, so let me do it here. So submission, it says no submission, okay. Online. And we gave this to November 1st, which is this Friday.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay. Have a look if it's there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So we will. What we will do is we have the class presentations today, right? Let me see how many we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we are a little bit short today. Is that right? Why are we so short in terms of people? Because of Halloween? Well, we need to do a quick roll. Attendance. Okay, Rashid is not there. Juliana is there. Chen Yang. Deepak is there. Jonala is not there. Lauren is not there. Sissy is here. Priya is not there. Piyush is not there. Pujita is there. Kim Song. Jinyan is there. Brian is there. Vamsi is there. Emmanuel is there. Sravani isn't there. Aditya isn't there. Madhuri is here. Madhuri, right? Satya, Xian Tang is not there. Ni is there. Gojian, Wanzhang. Okay, so Wanzhang, the other one is Yuanzhang. Okay, Yuming is there. Jingjing is there. Jia is there. And Shinze is there. Okay. All right. Very good. We've done that. So we'll do the class presentations in the second half. Or you want to do it now?
No.
Get the stress out. Okay, good. Then come on. Who's going first? Yeah.
everyone. So we are Blue Floor. Today we will share an audio player demo with you. Hope you guys can enjoy it. To better understanding the functionality, I break down into 3 parts. So the first one is a playlist. Here you can put the song you love to start. And the second one is a controller. It is the playback features such as start, stop, seeking bar, sort of things. The third one is the background play. When you lock the door, the music will still going on. So next, let's move on to the demo part. Okay, so you can see a scrollable list here, and look at the first item. It's a little different. It has a gray background here. So this is to indicate the current song, because we set the first one as a default, so it's there, and we can play it. Let me first shortly explain the button here. So obviously the first one and the last one is for next and previous. The second one is either for play or pause. We combine them together. And the third one is for stop. Then I click the play button. So yeah, the music comes and I can pause it. If you want to choose another song, say as the third one, I can click the third items on the playlist and it will work. So the music will change and the current indication will move on. Let's try. Okay, so it changes. And you can stop it when you click the stop button. Look at the seeking bar, it will go back to the 0 position. Yeah, you can reset it. And for the next one, now we are at the third song. When you click the next one, it will go to the fourth and play. Okay, yeah. Because we use a concatenation widget, so when we drag the seeking bar to the end, when it finishes the current song, it will go to the next one automatically. So it's a gapless playing. I will show you, like seeking bar here, and then let it play. Wait for a few seconds. Now it go to the fifth one. Yeah, when the situation go to the last song, and when I click the next one, we set it go back to the first one to make a loop. Yeah, you can see it go to the first one here. Okay, so it's this part, and the next part I want to show you is the background playing. So when I lock the screen, the song is still work, and there's a notification here. The button is still controllable. You can pause it. Actually, we have installed these apps on our real device. If you're interested, you can play that. Try it. And when we in developing the app, actually we can compared with 2 packages. One is audio player and one is just audio. Finally, we choose the second one, the just audio, because it has some built-in widgets that are customizable and make you easier to make your app. And my teammates will give you more details. Thank you.
Well, first of all, it's a working app. Congratulations. It really works beautifully. All right, let's hear the inside.
Okay, yeah. Before we implementing the playback functionality, we need to first prepare and load the audio source. So there are 3 classes we use here. The first one is the audio source class. The audio source class specifies audio source to play, and there are several types of audio source we can use: asset, file, and URI. And here we use the URI to play the audio from the network URLs. And the second one is media item class. We need to set it up here. It is used to play back in the background, but we will discuss it later.
So wait a second. So the
yeah.
audio source.uri has a URI, and
yes.
also it has a media item, which is what you will display on the screen.
Yeah, it is used to play back in the background on the lock screen.
So not
metadata. It's just a metadata.
It will display on the background. Yes.
But it also shows you what's on the list item.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And the third one is concatenating audio source class. It is used to group individual audio source item to a single list so that the audio player can navigate through. Because we want to build a playlist here instead of the single song, so we choose this class. And after the audio is ready, the next step is to initialize our player. So the player is the instance of the audio player class, and it is used to manage the audio playback and maintain the states of the playback. Yeah, and then we need to set up the audio source using this player. The player can load a single audio track or load a playlist of tracks. And here we choose the playlist. So we pass the playlist we defined before to the set audio source. And then in the initialization step, we also need to set up, we also need additional setup to trigger the UI re-render. So here we define a variable and then current position. It is used to display the slider sound position here. And when the audio plays, the slider sound needs to move forward. So the current position needs to be updated to trigger the re-render. So we use a set state function that can, in the stateful widgets, to update the current position to the real-time playback position of the player. So the question here is how can we get this real-time position and how to call these set state functions. Yeah, the solution is in a just audio package. This package offers various strings that provide the real-time updates on the player's properties, such as playback position. So we can subscribe to this string and set up a callback function. And we can use our customized logic. So we can trigger those customized logic whenever the property change. So here, for example, here we put a set state function within this callback. And when the property change, for example, the position change, then our variable that affect the UI re-render can change accordingly. Here are the strings we listen to in our demo. We listen to the current index string. It is used to tracking which song we are playing for the playlist. And we also listen to the position string and the duration string. And they are used for displaying the slider position. Yeah. So in addition to the previous string, we also listen to the player state string that the Just Audio offers. And this string provides the processing state. The processing state, it is a property of the audio player that indicates the current playback state. For example, loading, buffering, ready, or complete. And we will discuss it later. So, so for more state control, you can check the audio player state model on their website. And you can choose a specific state to manage your playback control based on your target function.
So our audio player uses list view builder to dynamically generate a list of songs in the playlist. Each song is represented as a list tile, displaying the song title and artist using metadata extracted from URI audio source item. So when the user taps on the song from the list, several actions triggered here. First, we update the current song index to ensure that to keep track of which song is currently selected. Before playing, we reset the playback to the start. This ensures that whenever a new song is selected, it starts from the beginning. Here we're passing the duration .0 and the current selected index to the seek method. And finally, we play the song by calling player.play method. Another key feature of our player is the play pause toggle implemented with the Flutters icon button widget. The button's icon changes based on the player's state, displaying a pause item if the song is playing and a play icon when paused. So the onPressed callback handles these interactions. If the player is playing, we pause it. If paused, we first make sure that the audio source is loaded, then we resume the playback. The seek functionality is provided through the slider widget, which is the entire duration of the song. Its value is synchronized with the current playback position. The minimum value is set to 0, which is the start of the song. The maximum value is the current duration, which represents the total length of the song. When user adjusts the slider, the onChange callback will update the current playback position by passing the position value to the seek method. The stop button is another vital control. It's configured to halt and reset the playback instantly. So pressing it triggers two actions. First, we stop the song, and then we reset the playback to the start by passing the duration .0 to the seek method. This ensures that when the user press play again, it starts from the beginning rather than where it was last stopped.
Here are the last two core functionalities. The first one is playlist looping. So playlist looping is basically what we have to do first is that we set a player state stream to listen to the player state changes. So when the player state changes, in this point is that the processing set is completed and was listened by the player state streamer, and it will set stage and set stage to. And you will use the same, like the seek function that's used before. And if the player stops, like it will free the resource from the audio resource, from the audio resource. So in our app, we use web URL to allocate and deallocate the resources. So like the difference between pause and stop is that in pause, the resource won't be released; it will be held in the buffer, and like in stop, it will be released. And if you want to use it again, you have to like reload it. So it will wait for a few seconds. It takes some time, but it's safer. And yeah, so the last core functionality is background setup. So this part we need to use it's like this. When you wake up, you see like stateless widget on it. It will show like mini user interface you can interact with. So to finish this part, we need to firstly add some just audio background dependency in our like dependency files, and then we need to initialize it and initialize its like the name, channel name, and channel ID, and like if it's ongoing, like if ongoing is like check the screen status. If the screen is closed, it's false. If the screen's been wake up, you set it to true, and it will show like the following widget, and you can interact with it. Okay, so the last one is like pretty close to how we store those music audio resources. We set up like a manual item, and we claim its title and artist. We store it in this audiostore.url, and yeah, to use it for like a unique ID for each multimedia item, and how to display the notifications. Okay. So to achieve those functionality, we need to do several setups. So basically, these are all from the third-party package. So all we need to do is to add the following changes: add admission for the screen, admission for the microphone, earphones, to achieve this. And if you use Android, that would be like a little bit complicated. But if you use iOS, that'll be much easier. And yeah, for the following information of our project and what package we use, you can, if you're interested, you can dive into those links to check. Yeah, that like thousands of lines of code. Yeah. Okay, so thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
This is amazing. No, don't leave yet. Okay, very good. This was really a fantastic presentation, fantastic, execution. Really, I'm really impressed. Thank you. But of course, there's always a but. So, who has a but? Who has a comment to them that they can improve? Perfect? Nothing to improve? I caught one.
I couldn't see the icon again.
You couldn't, you were a bit late. You missed the good part.
Oh, sorry.
You want to say it right now? I can show you on the Facebook actually.
Just 1 second. I mean, everything was great, and he can watch the video later. But the thing is, there's one thing that you should work on, and push it on the repo and show to people, because it's something that I don't know. Maybe there is in the package, maybe not. It's the following: you come to the end of the list. You're at the bottom of the list view. You're at the end of the list, and then it goes to the beginning, but your list view doesn't go back. So this is a problem, a very profound, not a profound problem, but that's an important UI problem, right? And if it's not there in an app that you're using, it's going to say, no. Why doesn't it go back up? If it's playing the first song, I'm still in the bottom of the page, and there is no highlighted item. So figure that out, how you can scroll back to the top of your page based on the index. If that index abruptly changes, the user is not interacting. Now you are changing the list, but then the view of the list is not changing. So try to figure that out, and then push it like this to the repo and share it with people. But then also try to solve that problem, because that's not a just audio problem. That's a more generic problem that we will benefit in everything we do. And if you can explain that as well, how you do it robustly, that'd be great. Because I don't even know the answer to that right now myself. I mean, I've done it before sometime, but I need to dig out. But if you can show it to us, or maybe show it to us later in a 5-minute sort of extra, that'd be great. But really appreciate it. Really nice presentation. And I think it would be a good resource for you guys to pick it up and use it, rather than trying to sift through all the documentation. And so now you have like a ready-made project that you can pull. Excellent. Thank you again. Right, the next team. So, that was fantastic actually. Really, I liked it a lot.
Till Tuesday.
That was good, no?
Along with the quiz.
Yeah, very good. I mean, and guys, those slides, I want to put them into the modules of the class, right? So that it becomes part of the material of the class. And then next term, maybe I'll teach from your notes.
Do we have copyright for it?
You will get copyright. Yeah. Every time I teach 1 Bitcoin, $70,000. By the way. Okay.
so we're going to be teaching about forms today. And for some context, here's a little example right here from the Adobe website. So we see forms in our everyday lives. We can also see them through the application Google Forms, right, when we're taking a survey. But I believe the most common place that we see them is when we're applying for internships or jobs. And so as you can see over here, excuse me, we have text fields, we have buttons, we also have boxes that we can fill out, and what's it called? The
Drop down.
Yeah, the drop down button, thank you. And companies or people that do set these forms up need them in order to have an organized and efficient way of collecting information, right? And so Flutter offers a widget called the Forms widget that allows programmers or people that are using their framework or application to implement these types of components and add this functionality into their app. And so the main components we're going to talk about today are the text form field, the radio, the checkbox, and also the drop-down button. Oh yeah, and so here is an app that we created to demonstrate the use of this of the 4 components. So right here we have a very simple profile page that has user information like their name, their email, their status at the university, as well as a few other pieces of information. And so when the user does want to edit their profile, they're given the general components of forms in order to edit information. So, So as you can see, they can edit their name, email, and all the other details, as I mentioned before.
Okay, so the first type of form we're going to talk about is the text form field. This is the basic where you're just relying on user input text. This is the stuff that's on the keyboard. So typing your name, maybe typing a sentence or description. So the type of widget we're going to talk about here is a text form field. Officially, it is a text field within a form field widget. But and the convenience of this over the original the text field is that this allows us to validate our user input, saver user input, allows us a lot more features to be able to work on it. So within our edit profile, we want to edit, say, first name or last name. So that text above is an example of how we use it within here. Yes, we can put my name there. And some of the components we will talk about in the text form, we have first the controller. This is what allows us access to the text state that we have here. It allows us more power over the text that we are receiving. And I'll talk a bit more on how to initialize it, but you would, not yet. But yes, you would have that with your text form field. Another component you'll have is the validator. So this is...
Can I just interrupt 1 second?
Yes.
So about the controller, you can also use this without the controller, okay? But the controller can come handy when you have to format the text while you're writing it down. You know, you will see some places where you're typing a phone number and it puts the right spaces as you're typing the phone number. So the controller manipulation can allow you to do that. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
Oh no, that was very good explanation that I didn't include. Okay, so the validator, I already talked about that. But basically, it's just simply validating your input to make sure that it matches your requirements. Within the code, for example, if you want to have a first name, you want to make sure they give you one and don't just leave it empty. So you would check if it's null or not, and then you would print out an error message underneath. So you can see it in our demo. For example, if it's empty and then you try to save it, it won't let you because above there's an error message. So this is something that you can use within your text form. And then what you want to actually happen once you've either edited your text input or save your text input, that happens in your callback function within your text form. So now talking about the controller, when you always have to initialize it as you see it in here.
And for every text form that you have to have its own controller there. So for us, because we're using a profile page, they already have like a first name, for example. And if you want to have like the name already pre-written inside, you would call it as you do here by calling on the .text of the controller. And since the user is is a parameter that we put into our edit page, you would do widget.user while calling on the first name. And an important thing to note about the controller is that once we're done using it, we have to make sure we dispose of it so we don't use too much of our resources. So when you dispose your overall widget, like our edit profile, when we save it, you gotta make sure you dispose all the controllers that you have. Okay, so that was the text form field. The radio button.
1 second. Can you go back up? Just a slide up to the screen. So you see the dispose, again, it's above super.dispose. So for the dispose or init state and so on and so forth, the VS Code will tell you where to fill in the extra stuff. So for the init state, you do super.init state, and then you do the further initializations. But with the dispose, you have to do the dispose before the widget dispose. Yeah.
On the text form, is there any input like keyboard initiation or something? Because like when you press it on a mobile, is that like an extra step that we have to do ourselves, to, like initiate?
No, it's automatic.
It's automatic.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's
I'm
automatic.
just not seeing the keyboard pop up. That's all.
Keyboard pop-up because they are on the simulator and they're typing with the manual keyboard. But you can set in the simulator, there is a setting that you can say emulate like a real device keyboard. It's doable. But yeah, you can use that in the simulator as well, but the default mode is not bringing up the keyboard. Sorry.
So the next type of form we're going to talk about is the radio button. This is when you want your user to choose between mutually exclusive options. So in short, one option at a time. So let's say we want to determine if our user is a student, a staff, or a professor. The first thing we should think about is using enums, which can allow us to declare the options that we want to have ahead of time before using the buttons. So here you can see we have the enum declaration, and there's always like text you want to have associated with it, right? So you want to call them a professor or staff, like in this manner. So you use this kind of like extension to get this as a string, because if you're gonna try to write this out as a string, what ends up happening is it becomes university status dot student, and that gets printed out that way. That was just a little tidbit. But now that we have our enums, we move on to having our radio buttons. So here's an example of a radio button for your student, right? So what happens is we have the radio declared inside a list tile, where we have the text here for what we want to call it, as well as these corresponding values. So the value here is the value associated with that particular button. So here we have university status.student, your enum. The group value is going to be the value of the currently selected among your radio buttons. So we're going to have 3 radio buttons. That the group value will be the one that's currently selected. And then here on change, again, this is another callback function for here is radio button, where based on this value, we would set the state and do the modifications and any changes that we want to perform. So, and this is officially done when the group value is matching the value. And here we save it into our user profile and record these changes after, and then once we save it, ta-da. Yes, that was a bit into the radio button.
Demonstration of how it changed status to a student. So for checkboxes, it's a great option for when you want to deal with non-exclusive options, so quite different from the radio button here. We've chosen to implement it in this way with dietary restrictions where people can choose multiple options here. And the way that we implemented it is by doing checkbox list tiles within the forms widget and declaring each single text box as a different tile here. As you can see, we started off with the vegetarian tile, the vegan, and the gluten-free tile, and we have declared their value and have a on-changed value button to sense when the checkbox is clicked or not clicked here. So the two most important things are the value, so it determines the current state of the checkbox here, and the on-change, which updates the state. And the way that we have integrated checkboxes into the forms in general is making sure that it is implemented in the save button, and it updates those values when we click save. So for example here, we wanted to just make sure our person is only vegetarian, not vegan or gluten-free. And that re-registers right here where it only says yes for vegetarian and no for the rest. However, I will point out that the checkbox list implementation is not the most efficient way to code checkboxes. While I was coding this myself, I had a big issue with trying to update the state of the checkboxes in the profile page, and that was due to a simple error with user types with a difference between a string and a boolean, and that could have been pretty avoidable by using the toMap function to use key value pairs to initialize each checkbox and automatically re-render the stage based on that, instead of doing it each one manually, grouping them all together and having them as a key value pair.
And so the next part is the drop-down button. There are a few ways to initialize it. You can also, just for reference, the drop-down is for us it's the select major, and you can see it's choosing from a list. There are a few ways to implement it. We chose the drop-down menu, which is actually, I think, relatively new. There's also the drop-down button, and then the drop-down button text form or something. But the drop-down menu is just a bit more customizable, so we just want to choose with the drop-down menu for our implementation. So yeah, I kind of just explained what each value here does, and so the initial selection is just, it's kind of self-explanatory. It's what you see initially. So whatever major our user currently is, we'll set it as the initial selection. And then we just have different values for things we see. The label shows what you want to see above it, or so it'll be the title that you want to show. And then on selected will basically just make sure that they've clicked, or it'll check that they've clicked a new value or changed it, and then it will set the state to that new value in a very similar way that we've seen in all the other, in all of our other options. And so the other thing I want to show, and probably the most important part that has the list or holds the list of all the options, is the drop-down menu entries, which is part of the drop-down menu. And so what it does is it creates a list of these drop-down menu entry objects, which is what's needed to be able to select them. And so you can scroll down a bit. You could probably go down a little more. Yeah, I think there's more code down here. And so here we've actually, I didn't show it, but we've initialized the list. And so what it does is basically it just takes each string from the list and it basically returns each as a drop-down menu entry. So from the list, it creates a drop-down menu entry string as an option that we'll see. And what else here? So the value and label you can see are the same. The reason is the value is the actual value we're setting. So in the list, you would see it as I have it just a string, so it'd be psychology. The label is what is actually shown. And so I just have them as the same thing because there's I had no need to change them here. And then the last important thing for this is because I used the list, like I said, and I used majors.map, I have to convert it back to a list, which is why I have the .to list at the end, because otherwise it'd be initerable. And so yeah, I think that's it for the drop down.
And then I just wanted to mention, just generally, if you wanted to work with multiple forms, I found that doing research, the best way to do that is to use like each form with its own global key and initialize that at the top of your file here, where you would do like, let's say we wanted to separate the food preferences from the rest of the academic information about the student, we would create 2 different forms here, and within the form widget, initialize that information to have those values that you saw up above with that code in there accordingly. And then make sure to also update the submit button to separate that form information separately so that it's stored in different forms. So if you wanted to have multiple forms in your app, it's pretty easy. It's just you gotta be intentional about the way you separate it and the way it updates. Yeah. And this is it. If you want more resources in general.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's great. Great capture. Any questions for anybody or any comments? Okay, I'll have comments. Okay, so a few things. We didn't see the full implementation. I saw Ananya earlier in the office hour, and she showed me something. And one of the things that they were doing was to create a, because they have a user object, user class. And the user class, in the form, they are updating the user class constantly, okay? So a simpler way to do it is because in order to update the user class, you have to have set blah blah methods of that user class, which you don't really need because you only get it from the database, and then because the way you work with it is that you get it from the database. If somebody is doing any updates on that user class, they have to be saved back to the database. And when you save it back to the database, just go and get it back from your database and pump it into your app, so that there is no discrepancy, that there is no chance there is a discrepancy with the master, which is your database up in the cloud. So therefore, you should really not have any methods that you can set properties of the user. So there shouldn't be any set methods of the user. Should just be created as an object from the database, and that's it. So therefore, one way to get around this is that you have, remember we did this data class, right? You put the user, and then you do the data class generator. It creates for you the map, to map, from map, to JSON, from JSON thingies. So for every object, you should have that, because you already have to have a from JSON or from map function of your user class to be able to load it from the database, right? So therefore, and you have a to map function as well. So therefore, get your user, turn it into a map, push it into your form as a map, or at the beginning of the form, create that map. That map will have all the fields. And then every time you do modifications, instead of, and anytime you do modification, you modify that map. And then you send the map back to the, to its, whoever needs it, right? So, or from the map, create a new user object and send that back, right? Because you can create the user object in one go from map. You have that thingy. So doing that is easy, with the to map from map or to JSON from JSON method. That's one thing. The other thing is, can you just slide up on the code a bit more? where you access the qubit. Okay, here. So for example, they are sending, this is on the UI, right? The drop-down menu, this is a UI element. But the UI element is interacting directly with the qubit, right? What would be better, right, is that that all of these changes, because this is in the drop-down menu, not in the final form save. So whatever you do with the drop-down menu, it should stay within the view. The only time you're interacting with the qubit is at the very end. Where is can you get me to the form save? Form key.save function. Yeah, there. Like here, we're doing this context.read. So the better way to do it is that this edit view should take a callback function for save form, right? And then here you should call that callback function save form and pass inside. Okay, you can do the user modified object inside, because the user modified object just in this step, what this does, this form key current state does save, it goes to each form field and updates the map. That save should update the maps. And then later on, in this step, before this step, you should then, after you do the save, you should also then turn the map into a user object and then send it back with the callback function, but not with the context.read. So then your view form object is independent of the qubit. It only needs a callback function and it needs a user object. That's it, right? So it's independent of the qubit. You can use it in multiple places. But this thing, you can only use it with that qubit, right? So therefore, it's better to. So these are just little things that you should keep in mind, and maybe if you can later update it or put a note saying that this could be better, it would help everyone, right? So these are the little things that will improve it. The bigger one I want to talk about is the drop-down menu. So the drop-down menu is a relatively new widget. Yes, that's correct. But the more proper widget to use here is a drop-down form field. There is a widget called drop-down form field. And the reason is the drop-down menu. Can you show me the menu? Yeah, I think, I don't know, can you display widgets there, or is it just text that you can send there? Is it just string? Let me say one thing. So the drop-down menu, this thing that's shown here, in some cases you will want to show a widget there. Like for example, phone numbers or phone country numbers. You want to show a flag and like +44 and the British flag for Britain thingy. So the drop-down, ideally, you should be able to show a full, no, how should I say, no restriction widget. You should be able to do any widget there, animated even widgets, whatever, in the drop-down menu. And the drop-down form field allows you to do that, and it comes with all the functions like onSaved and so on and so forth. Okay, and the drop-down menu is created for a different purpose, and that's why it doesn't have the onSave function, and it also it doesn't have any of the mechanisms for you to put in there error and so on and so forth, right? How are you going to put the error text and so on? But the drop-down form field already, all of these things are figured out, so that if, for example, you have the drop-down and you come inside with select, but it has to be selected, and the guy hasn't selected it on the page, you should be able to put an error. You have to select it, right, on the validation. So all of these things, make sure is on the drop-down form field. So, it would be great if you can look these things up and maybe do also a drop-down form field implementation for everybody's benefit. That would be great. But this is fantastic. Thank you. Very good. So what time is it? It's 8 o'clock. Okay, let's take a few minutes break, and then we're going to look at the dialog boxes or dialogs and bottom sheets. But I've discovered something new. There is something called idx.dev. This is the Google's browser-based VS Code, and if we use that, we can all from the browser go to the development environment without any setup issues and so on. So we'll try that when we get back. Okay, so let's take a break. You're very good, yeah. I love it. Oh.
So yeah, even suffer from errors due to work pressure.
Oh, okay. I'm not very familiar with it, but yeah. Yes.
You guys want to do the animations presentation?
You also need to work on the design.
Yeah.
August have for Tuesday too, right?
Yeah, I have 3 on Tuesday.
What's the
Quiz.
what about
I have a quiz on Tuesday.
that?
You have
I think I can do. Yeah, I can do Sunday, Monday.
The Go Rotor thing.
Or what?
Go Rotor thing that you did.
Yeah.
The
The UI stuff.
But the little part is done.
The router part is done. Yeah. So like it just has an empty page, and then you click the buttons, and it'll take you to the
Just
page.
adding some widgets on it is our group.
Yeah. And like our data. He probably wants a contact class and all that kind of stuff. Like a book data class and a repository.
I'll do it.
Can you guys send me your email so that I can add you as collaborators?
We can technically use this for app since we have this stuff. So it's like I didn't mind it.
In this demo app, I have the. Do we have the? So for example, you have these in the demo app. You have the authentication and these screens. If you use the Firebase UI, you will have these. So you don't really need to do that. That's not part of it.
For GitHub, okay.
So do you need to redirect to that instance where you want us to show that filter?
Well, I don't know. I mean, just the whole purpose of this thing is that the Figma should show the flow. So before you start coding, we should say, okay, this is the flow, this is how it detail. You have to judge what is detailed, what is not, what is the main thing, what is the detail. But it should be really, give people the idea that you are navigating through the app. Yes.
It's fine if
But you're not choosing a very, I haven't had a chance to look at them, I should look at them. You're not choosing very ambitious apps, right?
Travel app, solo travel app.
Okay.
是不是就是这个 object 你拿来了，就它作为一个
still trying to flesh out more so as to not make it overly complicated.
因为如在 Cupid 里头，它也可以在 Cupid 上下文去 change。
那个 UI 调构，
它现在放，那它应该放在哪？这个
一个变量可以吗？
那这个变量存在。
把这个变量你就存到 memory 上，每次要用。
我们有 user object，
至少得见面谈，我觉得这玩意儿网上谈不好。
那些信息、头像、time 信息全部搞在一个 user object 里。
但我们是给更新的。
那这个跟那些信息全部整合在一起，放在一个，包括它的名，那些这个什么邮箱那些全部搞在一起。
Okay, good. I mean, yeah, once you do the screens, we'll have a better idea. yeah, try to make it, as I said, simple. Maybe say, like this is now an app for, I don't know, the Bay Area. Okay, we haven't launched the whole United States yet. We launch area by area, just the Bay Area, so that you don't have that complication of saying that, okay, where are you located? Let me give you that area, and so you just peel off one layer of complication. You say, right now it's just the Bay Area that we're launching. Because when Uber launched, it launched just the Bay Area. It didn't launch UK and China. So think about it like
那我们那打平嘛，就是一个用户底下全部都是录起来。
后面再说吧，看有哪些数据要。
一个一个来，一个一个来。
Yeah. So just maybe the payment section right now. Let's do that. Because payments is very big. 那应该没问题吧？我觉得那个不担心，但是你给我。
So guys, this is what I'm talking about the drop-down button form field. It's a form field. It has all the things that it has to have. Where is the? Yeah, it has unchanged. It has unsaved. So it has all these things. The most important thing is that it takes this drop-down menu item objects. The drop-down menu item objects give you all the properties of what should I paint for the selected one, what should I paint for individual menu items, what value is coming, etc. So a lot of the things that you do manually by hand, trying to set these values, all of this, I mean, this widget just does it for you immediately. Also the initialization of the initial value and so on. Okay, shall we start? Or are people missing still? There's a few missing. Okay. Ryan and Ananya not there. Okay. So I put a little bit more information about this animation for next week. Who's doing animations? Okay, I put some more information about animations on that document. If you have questions, ask me. And I'll look at the other assignments as well if I need to put any more information. But I think you got the idea of these class presentations, right? This is quite informative and quite well. So, I mean, I'm assuming it gave you guys some hands experience with the coding, with the plugin and with the forms, right? So, very good. Okay, I'm gonna start with this. With the dialogue. I mean, basically, you have two types of dialogue. One dialogue which comes up as something with a darkened background. You can still see the background, slightly darkened, and it can have buttons. It can have a close button, and if you click outside, sometimes you can close it, sometimes you cannot close it. Or there are dialogues which are full screen dialogues that you need to close or you need to interact, etc. So those are the two types of dialogue. And let's just do a very simple dialogue. So if you the way you do it is that on the on-pressed property of the filled button, you call this function show dialog, which is a built-in Flutter function. You give it a context, you give it a builder, and it paints you a dialog. The thing is, dialog is what's called a material widget. And material widget is meant, how should I say? Material widget means not it's a material design widget. Material widget means it has some kind of like a background, right? And you can paint something on it. It's like material. It's not thin air. So because it's a material widget, the text that we're putting on it, it can render. If we didn't put this dialog on top of it, if we didn't put that material widget, and we just sent into the builder text, it would appear like this. Okay? So in the show dialog, you always have to wrap your content with a material widget. It could be a dialog, it could be a card, or there is also the construct called material. If you just say material and then put it inside, it will still paint. But the thing is, this dialog it's very, how should I say, it doesn't know anything, right? Therefore, it just gives me this little thing, puts the text in it, it gives me just that much material, and that's it, this dialog. So the dialog is more the raw element that you need to fill in with things. Maybe you have to put in, for example, if you put in to the dialog a center, if you wrap the text with center, what does center try to do is it tries to expand as much as possible. So center wants to expand as much as possible and fill the entire space, and then puts its children in the middle and let them take their own size. So if you put a center, this would go all over the place. We can play with these things. So the dialog is the most raw one, but we will probably not, you will use the dialog if you want something really customized, but typically you would use, for example, an alert dialog, right? So alert dialog is also a material object. So it has the background and everything, but it has certain features given to us, like it has a title widget, which is this one, and you send it there and it automatically gives you the right font size because it has a alert dialog theme or whatever inside the Flutter. The content widget is written with this font size, even though you don't specify any specific font size. It takes it from the alert dialog theme. And then you can give it a bunch of actions, and each of these actions, you can do something in the on-press, but in the end, you should really pop it, right? You should have a context.pop so that this page that is built upon your scaffold is released. Okay, any questions on this? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so now let's look at returning a result from the dialog. Okay, so here what we did was we did a await show dialog. We didn't set it to anything. Okay, but normally when we want a confirmation, we want to have a result, and typically there is 3 states, right, that you would give to the user. The 3 states to the user is okay, cancel, and unknown. How do you get the unknown result? You click outside. So if you click outside, you get the null result. Because the show dialog, because you haven't pressed any of these buttons, if you press the OK button, it will pop the context with a true value. And this, the type of this here in the context.pop, and how you defined your show dialog, the type you gave to the show dialog, they have to match. So this ball have to match these things, right? But if you are closing the show dialog, if you're closing the dialog by just clicking outside, it will return a null value to a result. So therefore, you can only define this as a nullable parameter. And then if you want to check what is coming out, so I just put in this, so after this, so in the onPressed async function, I also have this scaffold messenger of context that shows snack bar, which shows a snack bar to see what was actually pressed. It will, this is how it's going to press, so we can get the value. I mean, it's basically, whatever value is given from the dialog, you do whatever you need to do. But this is the pattern to get consent from the client for whatever. Questions? Right. So next comes a dialog where you have multiple options. Right? You could have multiple options. And for that, also Flutter gives us this widget called Simple Dialog. And Simple Dialog has children, right? Instead of actions, which Alert Dialog had, which were putting these buttons on the bottom, this one has number of options, and these options are simple dialog option objects or widgets. And the simple dialog option widgets, it has a child, which is what is shown, what is the widget that's shown on the screen. In this case, we're just showing a text widget for the content, right? And then it should have, each one of them should have an onPressed function, okay? And in the onPressed function, we're returning, again, the type of what we defined as the show dialog type. We're returning that. So let's just quickly understand this construct, because this is something that you should use as much as possible, okay? So pizza type, I've created as an enum. Okay, pizza type I created as an enum. Now this enum has a property. The pizza type enum has a property called values, and that property in pizza type.values property is a list. So basically, what I can do is that I can just get this pizza type, map each of the items, and each item is a type which matches also the dialog type, right? This is good, okay? And then as a text, I'm just typing name. So what the form guys did was very nice. They created an extension on the enum to be able to print a nice property. I've been lazy here. I'm just typing the name property of the enum, and the name property of the enum is just this one printed as text. So it's not looking very nice, but what they did, you can keep that in mind too if you need to print a nice information about the enum that in your code. That was very good. Okay, so then I'm creating this, the map, I'm creating this simple dialogue, the children of simple dialogue option. This is a list that it needs. I'm creating on the go from the types, okay? So that's a pattern that you should keep in mind. It's doable. And then the other property for the show dialogue is the barrier dismissible. You know, these things have many properties. We cannot go through them all one by one, but the frequent one you will use is that, do you want him to just close the dialogue, or do you want him to make a choice before being able to move? That's the barrier dismissible function. So if you say barrier dismissible false, you cannot continue without making a choice, okay? And vice versa. Questions? So the full screen dialogue is, again, it has this full screen constructor. It takes a background color. And here, as you've seen, I've used a center center widget to put the button right in the middle. And that's it. It's nothing more interesting than that. Now we come to the model bottom sheet, because sometimes the sheet comes from the bottom and you have to do that. And this is done with this function, show model bottom sheet. Again, here I'm returning a dialog. The only difference is the bottom sheet already has some size ideas of, you know, what, how big it wants to be, which you can set in different areas, but it's already giving me all this area and putting my text in the middle of it. So that's the show mode. So obviously you will, for example, when would you use this model bottom sheet is I guess, yeah, if you want this, you can do this model bottom sheet. You bring it up to, I don't know, half of the page. But when you would use it is if you have something like scrollable there, because you don't know how big the guy's screen is. And if he set, for example, text magnification to 2, then he has even less content available. And in a dialog box that pops up in the middle, you can actually do the scrolling there. But it's usually better to put any sort of scrolling content into a bottom sheet. It's more natural. I don't know. Okay, and there is also this thing called a persistent bottom sheet. Now the persistent bottom sheet is assigned at the bottom sheet property of the scaffold. So when would you do that? For example, you are you can say, for example, you haven't made your payment for the app in 3 days. You're going to lose your I don't know. You're going to lose your access to the app. Make sure you pay, and it always stays there. And it's a programmatic thing that you show. So in the bottom sheet property, you can wrap this in a qubit builder, like payment qubit builder. And in the payment qubit, you have the user's subscription state, and it will either return a null or return a bottom sheet to show the banner in the scaffold. Bless you. Okay, so that's the persistent bottom sheet. Now, there is also a programmatic bottom sheet that you can show, meaning a bottom sheet that comes up like the persistent bottom sheet, not the model one, that comes up. But you do that with this construct. So you have to find the scaffold first, and then you have to show the bottom sheet. Okay, so the bottom sheet is going to come when you find the scaffold. So the thing is, if I write this code like this, okay, so you have to really pay attention to this now. if you write the code like this and you're trying to find scaffold of context, which context is this? When I say context here, to which context is it referring? Huh? To this one. So this context, does it have a scaffold? So this context doesn't have, because it's only being built after. So if I'm referring to this, this is not going to work. Okay? But if I put a show button, if I create another widget which has only the filled button, the same thing. So this is the same as this. But I create, this is a quirk about working with Flutter. It's an error that you may get when you're coding, and it's something to keep in mind about understanding the context. When it says, oh, I cannot find the scaffold of that context, or I cannot find this and that of the context, that's how it's coming about. So the filled button, when I put it by itself, with an on-pressed, referring to the context, it won't find it. But if I do a show bottom sheet stateless widget, which just gives us the filled button, now this one asks the context of the show bottom sheet, right? When he's trying to find the scaffold, he asks this context. This context now has a scaffold, right? Because the bottom sheet, its context has a scaffold. So therefore, here you will be able to find it. Do you understand? Okay, it's an important thing about how the widgets work and how the context works, and so on. Okay. Questions so far on this? Okay, I wanna try an experiment with this IDX, and what is this? Okay, what's this presented view? Okay, so there is this link. Can you try to go to this link in your computer? https idx.google.com, or actually go to idx.dev and create a profile. Yeah? With your Google account, go to idx.dev and create an account. And then go to this address. So it's idxgoogle.com/import. And then URL is the GitHub repo, or our GitHub repo. Actually, if you go to the GitHub repo, there's a link already in the README file at the very bottom. You can just click that. Sorry, just show me. Let me show you this quickly. So at the bottom of the README file, there is already the link. I already put the link here. And import the repo and just click, this is a Flutter app. Does it work?
It's loading.
It's loading, yeah? So Google has done this. I mean, this is really nice. I think they allow you to keep like 3 or 4 GitHub repos as on virtual machines in the IDX, and it loads up the Android Studio. Android emulator, web emulator. It loads up all the Flutter source code and so on. I found it quite nice. So you just click on, this is a Flutter app, and import. And then you should get, so this is my IDX home, and your workspaces, so it will be in my workspace, so if I click on it, I think they keep it hot only for a certain period and then they unload it.
Oh, no.
So right now there should be no discrepancy between anybody. Everybody should be seeing the same thing. You're seeing the same thing. Excellent. So once it finishes the preview, or maybe the servers are loaded because we're all at it at the same time, but who knows? Just let the Android sort of start. Okay, so the Android has started, and I'm going to build my, so I'm in the Android emulator here. That's good. And then I can start building my app. Hopefully everybody should get the same behavior now. We've solved that problem. No? Emulator for everyone. So that we don't have to worry about each one's installations. Hopefully it works. Error. Try to run again.
Will we get like a copy of the workstation, or will we have the same workspace?
No, you have your own workstation. You just downloaded a repo, or you copied the repo to your workplace, and it will stay there, and you can always go back to it and pull fresh if you.
In the Git repo, I guess, I see. Yeah. I think GitHub also has the same with CodeSpaces.
You see, I'm sorry?
I think GitHub also has the same with CodeSpaces, is what they call it.
Oh, maybe, yeah. The problem is that it downloads all the SDKs and stuff like that every time you launch it. So it keeps it hot for, I don't know, a couple hours. Okay. So this is saying error, but I think it's working. It's working. Have you guys been able to run it? Yes? No?
Setting up workspace.
Error? How is this possible?
It's supposed to be exactly the same,
It's supposed
right?
to be exactly the same.
Failed to build for me.
Okay, I'm gonna give up. I mean, if this doesn't work, I'm gonna give up.
Yeah, it can be
Yeah, although not everything is, I couldn't get messaging to work. I got this thing to work, but messaging didn't work. Give it another go with the build.
I'll let you know if it works.
Because I didn't do anything else. I also pulled the same repo from the server. So, Kim Song, tell me when it's built.
Yeah, it's just taking forever.
It's built? Guys, if it gets you error, just rebuild it. It will work. Because I think the problem is it's taking its time to download all the SDKs and everything. Is it working?
Oh no. Let me check it. Oh yeah. It's working now.
Okay.
I think also you can use dev containers. Like if you download a whole machine setup, and then someone can have it in Visual Studio Code with a whole machine setup, like with the specific node version that you want installed, and like the specific SDK.
Can you explain that to me later?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know how to do that.
No, I don't know much about it. I know it's like a new thing, so that people can have the same setup in a Docker container.
Can you find out a little bit about it and write up?
I'll try.
Okay. All right. So my objective today was to get this going, so that we get some confidence to be able to use this all together. So who has been able to build it now? Raise your hand, please. Kim Song, there. You guys still not? You built it?
Yeah.
Back there, anybody been able to build? Deepak, why not? What's happening? Can you kick it again? 3 times. Oh, not that one. Okay, let's try that one. I don't know what's there. That's a bug. I think this is quite a new project for Google. So. create it as a Flutter project and everything, right?
Yes.
Maybe I'll give
Does
up.
it take that long? Right?
Oh, you're there?
Yeah.
Still?
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. All right. Maybe this is too experimental. Okay. All right. We'll go back to basics. So, okay, I mean, if we're not able to get this, there's no point. I've shown you the code for all the things here. Basically, this code about showing the dialog for the different buttons. This is already available in the GitHub repo that you can pull and have a look. And you have also the slides. So that should be enough information for you to be able to do dialogues when you need them. Okay? And okay, I want to quickly talk about a simple way of Firebase auth, okay? So this template app that we have, the Santa Clara, you know this one, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Santa Clara. And in here we have Firebase UI auth. So this is a package, Firebase UI auth package. It gives us out of the box some functions like signing in, forgot password, and register, okay? And all of this is accessed through just this much of code, okay? So this package, sign in screen from UI auth, and it basically, you capture, are you signed in or not signed in? And it stays there until you're signed in. And then if you're signed in, you can send the user somewhere. I mean, here in this code, I'm doing some things with email verification and so on, but leaving email verification flows aside, if you just put in the sign-in screen to your code, you will be able to, you will be able to access Firebase authentication. The ability to access Firebase authentication directly, of course, exists in the Firebase auth package. So the actual API of Firebase auth is Firebase auth package. Okay, Firebase UI auth, this package, is a wrapper around the core Firebase auth to allow you to, to basically simplify these screens. And if you look at the code of the sign-in page, all I'm doing is, in this case, just giving it a provider. So the sign-in screen will get providers. So if you have Google sign-in, Apple sign-in, and so on, you have to bunch all of that into this provider list. And then you have this auth state change action that you have to work. In this implementation, I'm not doing anything with the auth state change action, okay? Because I'm also directly accessing the authentication from my authentication block, okay? So if I go back to the docs, or the app structure. Okay, if you look here, the app structure, I have a authentication block which listens to the authentication repository. So remember, we want to put a repository as a buffer to the core library, because if we want to change the core library, then we don't need to change our app structure. So the core library is Firebase Auth, and what it does is that it sends changes to the user state. So when you do an email login to Firebase Auth, this Firebase Auth object, if you put a listener to it, it will send you the user object the current user was a null, and it turns it into a user object with an email, a user ID, and so on. And so in your, there's a typo here. No, not a typo. Okay, so this one has a listener to Firebase Auth, and then the block listens to the repository. So there's two listeners because you don't want the block to be listening directly to Firebase Auth, okay? Because if you change this, okay. So the block also has a listener to the authentication changes, and the block manages what to do, because the block also goes into the Go router's listenable, right? To be able to redo the routing if the user's authentication changes from authenticated to non-authenticated. Or in other words, from Firebase perspective, if the user is null, it's not authenticated. If the user is not null, then it's authenticated. Simple as that. The only thing is that if the user is not null, user can still be authenticated by email not verified. And this is something that we deal with here. This refresh listenable will always listen to the changes in the authentication state, because sometimes authentication state will say, actually it's authenticated, but email needs to be verified. So it listens to this, and it does, again, the routing and then in the routing, it actually does the direction. So if you look at the implementation here, okay? Sorry, where's the sign-in page? Oh. Yeah. So in the sign-in page, actually, this is wrong. This is not there. In the sign-in page, I'm actually not doing anything after authentication. So it will only issue this authentication once the user is signed in. So if the user is trying to figure out his password, this widget deals with it. I don't have to deal with it. If the user has entered the wrong email password, this widget deals with it. I don't have to deal with it. If the user needs to register, this thing deals with it. I don't have to deal with it. But once the user has signed in, of course, the Firebase, so in the repository, in the authentication repository, I have a, I basically convert, so Firebase auth state changes, these auth state changes coming from Firebase Auth, which is the core library, I'm converting it to a user stream inside my repository. Okay? So I'm converting that to a user stream in my repository, and then in my authentication block, where was it? In the authentication block, in the init portion of the authentication block, I'm creating a subscription to the authentication repository's auth user stream, okay? And this is again not directly to Firebase, but to the conversion. And I'm listening for the auth user. If the auth user is null or email is null, whatever, you can look at these things. But if the user is not there, basically, if it doesn't have an email or UID, I'm sending out an authentication signed out event. So my router now should say, authentication signed out, so I need to rebuild my routes and show whatever I need to show. So this signed out event, therefore, will go and the signed out event, this one, will emit authentication not signed in state, right? I will emit an authentication not signed in state, and I'll need to deal with it. The other thing is, if it's signed in, I have an update user method in my block. If it's signed in, it has an update user method. So the update user method is down there, here, okay? We fill in, because the authentication is sending us a user object, not our internal user object for the app. It sends just the parameters that comes from authentication, because afterwards, for your big user object in your app, you should have much more parameters, like, I don't know, credit card numbers, birthdays, blah, blah, and so on and so forth. Whereas the authentication user will have a display name, maybe an image URL, and UID and email, and that's it, just these parameters. So in the update user, I'm setting my user to the new user, then I'm checking whether the email is verified. If the email is not verified, if it's verified, I just say, okay, authentication signed in event, meaning I'm going to put my state to authentication signed in, okay? But if it's not verified, I say authentication email verification screen event. So basically, I'm putting an event to fire up the email verification screen, okay? So, and where does that event go? That event goes authentication email verification. So that event gets captured here, and it emits this state, authentication email verification screen state, okay? And we will now see where they are used. So these are basically, once my user comes in, authentication user comes in, depending on its email verification, I can emit states into the platform. And they are caught all in my router. In my router redirect, I will handle these states, because every time they are, you remember the stream to listenable that we did earlier, right? With the mock authentication blocks. Now this is the real one. So if authentication state is the verify email state, or email verification screen state, whatever, then the verify email path should be returned. So that's the verify email screen, okay? If authentication is signed in, is not, so this is returned and that's done. But if it is not signed in for any other state that comes in, but it's not signed in, send them to sign in, okay? And then if it starts with sign in, and it's not, if the user is signed in now, right, we fall to this case. So if the user is signed in, we fall to this case. If the user is signed in and currently the user is in the sign in page, then send them to the starting page of the app, which is /images. Okay? So a cascade. Cascade number 1, check whether you need to be in the email verification state. Cascade number 2, check whether you're logged in or not logged in, right? If you're anything but logged in, you should go to sign in now in that cascade. The next so it's a waterfall of events. So think of it like that. That's a waterfall of like shells of urgency or whatever, security, whatever you want to call it. So that's the waterfall idea on those states, and they get triggered with the authentication state. So that gives me, therefore, so where was this? Where was our project? Here. Which project is this? This is Santa Clara, right?
Visiting professor Visiting professor campus
So this is my app, right? I go to my app in my authentication, because you will implement this authentication somehow. I think this is an easy way if you can pull it out of the template app and use it like that for your authentication. So I get to the authentication. I don't have a password. I click on register. Do you know this trick? The plus X trick. Do you know this trick? Yes or no? Okay, so this is a good trick in Google. You can always use it. When you have your email address, mehmet@artun.com, you can always go and say mehmet+15@artun.com. Then you will still get your email into mehmet@artun.com, but you can filter incoming messages by the +15. Also, in some websites, when you're registering, if you register this with your name plus something, plus, for example, you're registering to the Nike website, mehmet+Nike@artun.com, then all the messages that Nike sends you will be to mehmet+Nike@artun.com, and then you can filter them easily. I mean, it's just a thing. For testing, I love to use it like this, to create multiple email addresses, okay? And I create a password. And I register. Immediately, I've signed in, and authentication block sends me to register. And I say, I can say, I'll do it later, or I can do verify email. When I click on verify email, it'll kick me out. Okay, it kicks me out, and I just need to go to my other email. Okay, so I got this email, and as you can see, it came to mehmet+15@artun.com. And then when I click on this, I have verified my email. It just says, I mean, we don't have the links, the app links, and so on and so forth, and we're not going to do it. It's too much complication. But at least with this structure, you know how to do Firebase authentication at the very base level. So we've verified the email. I go back to my app, and I try to log in. With the username and password, okay? And I'm inside the app. The other thing is this sign out, okay? How does the sign out work? The sign out button in the navigation, in the nav bar. So I go to my widgets. Is it in my widgets or menus? Oh, I don't know where it is. Oh, under scaffold with number. Oh, no, sorry, on the pages. What am I talking about? Okay, image page. On the scaffold, I should have, around the where's the drawer?